you're watching our program freely and critically, conducted by me, Tomas Kavaliauskas, and Professor Gintautas Mažeikis from Kaunas, Vytautas Magnus University. Our guests today are from Riga University, Vladislav Volkov and Deniss Hanovs. They have training in sociology and philosophy, and I understand in communication as well. So we would like to touch certain questions about Latvian geopolitical orientation, Latvian regional
stereotype of colonizators, because ordinarily we take from in the world history British colonizators or French colonizators. What does mean Soviet people as a colonizator? Could be Ukrainians or Belarusians who came to Latvia to be colonizators of Latvians. Remember that they were colonized as well, you know, in Ukraine. How colonized people could colonizate the others, you know? What does mean colonization in the Soviet Union, migration sense?
Okay, well, right. I know that Vladislav, my colleague with whom we have debated about it, has a very different opinion on this term itself. But, my sources are based mainly on the research of migrant Lithuanian and Estonian colleagues, Annus and many others, who have also published a lot of books on the so-called Soviet colonization. Well, it is in fact, I would probably come here from a different approach, from the history of literature. If we look into the novels of Sergei Dovlatov, who actually also experienced kind of everyday life undercover anti-Semitism. But in his novel Compromise, we see a perfect description of what you have asked. So he himself was an agent of colonization, working as a journalist in Soviet, Estonian newspaper. And at the same time, he actually he perceived himself as a colonized, but he was forced to act, so to say, towards the Estonian society as a colonizer. It was a kind of political schizophrenia. And that's why I think that all these institutes, it's not only military, and of course it is also the usage of resources, but resources are very different. You can use intelligentsia to control them. You can actually use them to produce a new history of the Baltic societies, which is, of course, so to say, friendship with the Soviets and so on and so forth. So the minor brother and the, because we all know that, in fact, late Stalin politics was based on the, so to say, Russian nationalism mixture with the Bolsheviks ideology. So Dovlatov will tell you everything in these 12 chapters. I think this is a brilliant description of how he was in this double situation. And at the same time, even he saw that he is forced to admit that Estonians are kind of reversed colonized. So they are superior to this Russian Jewish journalist who is constantly drunk. But I mean, the Estonians, they have different habits of, so they are more Western. And of course, in everyday life, in the Soviet time, it was a kind of colonized territories which were in fact a piece of West which was imagined, you know. And that's why I think this, literature can help us a lot to see this.
Thomas, would you like to continue?
Yes, I would like to ask either Vladislav or Deniss or both the same question. Talking about toxic memory, would you agree or modify my position that or hypothesis that in Latvia, when May 9th is celebrated as a Liberation Day, and also when in Latvia is celebrated Independence Day, regaining independence, different perhaps different ethnicities gather for those celebrations. But is that in any way a reflection of some toxic memories, or maybe in practice people simply just enjoy? May 9th is celebrated with songs and energy, and maybe that toxic memory is more for historians and politicians rather than for those who are celebrating. And the same with, but maybe it's more problematic with those who celebrate Latvian Independence Day. Perhaps it has transformed, but it used to be with some neo-Nazi slogans. Has the situation changed? Is that toxic memory on both days, or is it not really in practice, but maybe it's more for historians and politicians?
Vladislav.
You see, this is really a very, very acute question for Latvian reality, not only a scientific reality or reality in our science, reality in politics, reality in, I can say, in everyday life of ordinary people too. For instance, before pandemic time, it seems to me, 2 years ago, when you come, for instance, in you see in 9th of May, for instance, in near this monument in Pārdaugava, you can see a lot of people. It seems to me that our, I can say this newspaper statistics and maybe police also showed such information about approximately 100,000 people in different periods of history. So a lot of people. So for instance, when we take into account Independence Day, Latvian Independence Day, according to myself, there were not so much people, for instance, gathered near, you see, this Independence Monument. So this is a real fact, for instance, and this real fact we can find not only last 10 years, last decade or 2 decades, in 90s, approximately 25 years, 25 years ago, situation was similar. So we see this reproduction of in our consciousness, in people consciousness, attitudes, reproduction of attitudes, to these symbolic datas. It's very, very important. And so we see new generation, also new generations as Latvians and Russian-speaking population are integrated in this memory. So this fact is very, very important. But can I say that you see this differentiation in Latvian society is discussed not from the position of you see single political case, for instance, from different nationalist politician discourses, or liberal. Can I say that in Latvia we see huge discussion between two groups of society? Russians, Latvians, according to this, you see, symbolic data. No, we have not this, I can say, the program, or maybe such wide, you see, platform for the discussion. We have not this discussion between Latvian and Russian, so-called Russian or Russian-speaking intellectuals, according to this problematic. Yes, of course, we see every year, for instance, before 9th of May and before you see Independence Day, a lot of publications. We see a lot of conflict publication, for instance, in social media, for instance, in Delphi as in Russian language and Latvian language, especially in comments. We see absolutely confronting, you see, estimation of 9th of May and so on. So, two huge historical and social facts. But according to myself, we have not good program, we have not good communication between two parts of Latvian society, yeah, according to such problematic, yeah. So, but we have some sociological research, and in our with Deniss Hanovs common paper in your book, yeah, I used some data from sociological research. It's very interesting, yeah, and such statement, for instance, for our listeners, it's very, it's still interesting that, for instance, if we take so-called Russian community, yeah, position of Russian community to this celebration of Victory Day, yeah, is more consolidated in comparison with Latvian community, yeah, that is more differentiated according to, you see, celebration of 9th of May, yeah. But this research of our colleagues in Institute of Philosophy and Sociology, it seems to me it was approximately 7 or 10 years ago, yeah. And we have not good new information about the continuation of this process, of the estimation of such process. Yeah. So, so my position is such that this, I can say, fragmentary discussions, or very short, or maybe very small number of discussion according to these symbolic data, yeah, this is only one fragment of what? Of very weak communication between two parts of Latvian society, yeah, between Russians, Latvians, not only according to this problematic of symbolic data, but to other aspects of Latvian domestic policy, foreign policy too, yeah. Very interesting, for instance, before every parliamentary elections, yeah, we see, you see some meetings of the presidents on post of prime minister in Latvia, and main representatives of main parties, yeah, they discuss such problematic, make some, you see, political agenda. And I was surprised that it was approximately 6 or 7 years ago when all these politicians, yeah, who have this opportunity to discuss or maybe to start this discussion about the strengthening of solidarity between two communities, yeah, they ignore these aspects, yeah, they ignore this ethnic problematic at home, yeah. So we know, everybody now in Latvia, these acute so-called ethnic questions, but people ignore also politicians, yeah, ignore to start these discussions, for instance, before elections too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Professor Deniss.
Yes, well, I would probably agree to many of the topics which Vladislav has addressed, but I think it is also, in fact, quite a simple situation, which goes back to the very well-known Roman proverb about to divide and to rule. So this is the reason why the political discourse keeps this ethnic gap in history on the 9th of May and the 16th of March, both so to say, dates are kind of symbolic way of re-establishing the power to explain the history. Because in fact, if we see now the political discourse, it simplifies both, so to say, events, March and May, as much as possible, because this is also the continuation of the concept of ethnically united and closed groups. The diversity itself, be it social, ethnic, economic, sexual, whatever else, and also history diversity. I mean, we all know that there have been thousands and thousands of ethnic Latvians who joined the Red Army during the Second World War. And of course, we can talk about how they joined it, but there have been people who shared the values of the Soviet Union ideology.
It is usually very silenced information.
Exactly. So, and they have really thousands. So where do you think they are on the 9th of May? They might be not on the right place. I mean, they might be not on the 16th of March there, but they might join, so to say, the other community. And this is where the magic of the divided society breaks down. This is how we can actually take away the, so to say, dominance of political elite to decide who is where. Because what we need to really develop, and I think this is what Vladislav has said, we need to develop the culture of complex debates about history. We need, so to say, we need to have this, to get away from the simplicity. And this is also one of the elements of the quality of public discourses. And what we need, of course, and what we lack is the political will. We still perpetuate the same, so to say, explanation, which is simplistic, which is xenophobic on both sides, because there have been also parties of minorities and NGOs of minorities who actually copy the discourse of the majority nationalistic group. So you do not expect there is some kind of, leftist discourse of diversity, acceptance, and recognition. Forget it. They just copy the same, because this is how they, in fact, try to sustain their own identity. And that's why I think, in fact, in my opinion, the lack of this political will has been for decades. And now that our neighbor, Russia, does everything to develop the politics of history, the politics of memory, this is the best way how they can affect Baltic societies, because we are divided in Latvia, and it is very easy to create some kind of symbolic upgrade of the community, which is not interesting for the elites, which is mostly unknown for the elites, and which serves as some kind of ghost to call it each time we need it. So in fact, I would really come back again for, let's say, to the classical author of the post-colonial turn, the Edward Said, who actually proclaimed that a scientist is also a politician.
I would like to continue this Thomas question, but related concerning contemporary events, and we see the differentiation of celebration of May of 9 between Ukraine and Belarus in contemporary days. Ukraine has big, I would say, troubles, uncertainty about what to do with this 9 of May. And Belarus, even after 2020, after this election and new conflict in Belarus between civic society and Lukashenko, they continue to celebrate 9 of May as some common holiday and common understanding. And with the rejection of the other approaches, they still consider so-called partisans or guerrillas, red guerrillas, as some major character of Belarusian society and the memory, differently from Ukraine. My question is about how these Ukrainian and Belarusian events separated so-called Russian speaker community in Latvia. And the second, does it mean that even this separation touches memory as well, that they started to remember differently than they did, than they remember before these events? How the events of Ukraine and Belarus influenced the structure of minorities and the memory of them. Vladislav.
You see, your question is related, first of all, the estimation of nowadays situation in public consciousness. Approximately 5 or 6 years ago, there was information in media about some differentiation in Ukrainian so-called community in Latvia. yeah, according to Ukrainian crisis and so on. So differentiation. This means that this community is united according to this foreign, you see, political problematic. But when I started this process, not only of, you say, Russian minority, but other Eastern Slav minorities here, similar situation was with Belarusians, with especially Ukrainians in 90s to 30 years ago. Yeah, because some differentiation was really, especially in Ukrainian community. But this differentiation means that you see, they are not so huge or maybe symbolic conflict between Russian and Ukrainian community and so on. For instance, in Latvia, in Riga, I didn't hear Ukrainian language from, you see, native, so-called native Ukrainians here. Yeah, approximately 6 years ago in Jelgava, I met some group of, you see, males, yeah, who spoke Ukrainian language, but maybe these people were migrants from Ukraine, yeah, labor migrants, yeah. But you see, in our everyday life, yeah, I know that this concrete person, yeah, has Ukrainian identity, yeah. But in all cases, in communication with me, with other people, these people use Russian language and they don't want to stress this Ukrainian identity, yeah, their personal Ukrainian identity, yeah. And you see, it's a very interesting case. For instance, my, you see, acquaintances, yeah, with different ethnic background, nationality, yeah, in majority of times they stress their ethnic identity if they are, for instance, Jews, Tatar, for instance, Belarusian, yeah, and with other, you see, ethnic identity, with one exception. If this personality, yeah, with whom I communicate, if this personality is Ukrainian. In all cases, I don't know why, yeah, they want to not to actualize his or her Ukrainian identity. Yeah, so such cases. And nowadays I can't say that Ukrainian community here, a lot in Latvia, are consolidated according to Russian community here, according to foreign policy, for instance, and these foreign political issues at a whole. Yeah, of course, different representatives of Ukrainian community stress their position that are absolutely similar to the position of a Ukrainian state. Yeah, so.
Deniss?
Well, I would say that it is a really striking difference of how people reflect and accept the news from, let's say, now the crisis near the Ukrainian border or the annexation of Crimea. I see it in terms of generations because I think many of us have this experience that when I call my mom, and I say that I have a very bad feeling when I read the headlines about approaching military conflict in 2022. Then she says, no, it's not like this. It is the NATO who uses Ukraine to attack Russia. The end of the story, so to say. And then you see that my mother has become someone who has moved to another planet, and she's now, for me, kind of extraterrestrial and not my mom, because it's a completely different world. She uses or she consumes the media of Russia, and the issue is of this media consume people's minds, and that's why I think the fake news is not only the issue of technology. The fake news is do you have a kind of, using probably medical terms, do you have the predisposition of your immune system if it can be attacked by these viruses of fake news? And then the question is, why? And then again, I should point to the political elite, which for 30 years has not had a concept of inclusion in politics, of media. It was the politics of, let's say, to forbid and to have, the separation of different ethnic groups. And by the way, I think the latest amendments to the Latvian constitution, the so-called introductory part, years ago, has so to say sealed up this romantic issue of state power or state will, or the will to develop a state which will live forever, or the Latvian wisdom, and all of this. Sorry, I've seen it in the newspapers in Germany in the 19th century after Napoleonic Wars, and we are still somewhere there. But again, it's the issue is for whom is it useful, and it is useful for the political elite.
Maybe I can add, according to if we discuss as sciences here, yeah. So, for instance, approximately 30 years ago, in my Institute of Philosophy, there was such practice, yeah, and experience to publish publish some small books about different ethnic minorities in Latvia, yeah, and ethnic groups in Latvia, yeah. Of course, about Russians wrote Russian. But if we take, for instance, case of Belarusians, case of Ukrainians, yeah, about these ethnic groups wrote my colleagues, yeah, who are Latvians, yeah, because for instance, in this group of people, of Ukrainians and Belarusians, they are not so much, you see, people who can develop identity, especially at the level of scientific discourse about the understanding of this group, yeah. And of course, this is the lack of the this identity of these people here, professional, I can say, identity, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I would like to ask a little bit about our current identity, regional identity comprehension. I remember how I was personally stunned when in 1998 former president of Estonia, Henrik Ilves, at that time perhaps he was just a foreign minister, in Sweden sort of announced new Estonian regional identity, that it's no longer Baltic state, it's a northern state in affiliation with Finland, Estonian Nordic region, and in the legacy of 1989, we are so used to see Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania as three Baltic states, and even today in this military potential conflict between Russia and NATO, the Baltic states yet again are portrayed as one region. And if you sense in Latvia at all that Estonia is in any way not a Baltic state, I don't know if you have that feeling at all. I wonder, what kind of Latvian identity of a state then is regional identity? Because if Estonia, Nordic country, if someone would say Lithuania is somewhat Lithuanian, Polish, Grand Lithuanian Duchy history-wise, also somewhat East Central European country, then what do we have left? Only Latvia is a Baltic state, which would be a little bit funny.
Yeah, maybe I can say to you that in all our, you see, sociological research in Latvia, yeah, in the position of identity of respondents, we put this question, yeah, with what you identified yourself, first of all, for instance, with local area, for instance, I can say maybe a rural area, maybe city, then some Latvian region, Latgale or Riga or central Latvia, or maybe Kurzeme, with Latvia, with, of course, there were such position your level of identification with Europe as a whole, or maybe with Northern Europe or Eastern Europe. So such differentiation, yeah, not only in my research, but in research of my colleagues, we see, you see very little, you see, interest of our respondent to identify themselves with Europeans. Yeah, such case was before the integration of Latvia in the European Union. After this period of integration, we see, you see, minimal interest to such identity. Yeah, so, and therefore, this more, you see, delicious, I can say, identities with North European or with other Baltic countries. Yeah, they are too similar to this low level of identification with Europe in comparison with identification with their ethnic group, with Latvia at all, or maybe with local area identification. So we see such, you see, case in Latvia. Maybe in Lithuania, I believe you have absolutely similar situation.
Well, I think if we analyze the media discourses and also the official public discourses of power, then we see a kind of continuation of this famous song "All by Myself." Yeah, so we are kind of alone standing there, because if Lithuanian and Estonian political imagery or imagination has links to past or to the self-chosen kind of region, in case of Finland and Polish cultural heritage, then Latvian, so to say, non-Latvian elites have been for ages, for more than 700 years, the German aristocracy and middle class. And that's why, in fact, the whole idea of Latvian national movement was based on the idea of to get away from them, to liberate themselves, to even overcome them in the issues of modernity and so on and so forth. So the Latvian dictator Ulmanis said, so to say, goodbye forever. Then they left on the 39. So, and that's why I think we don't have any historical links. What concerns Europe, yes, it's also my concern as a citizen and also as a public activist, because I think we as society, we ignore or we do not really estimate the role of European identities. And we see that this local, either region identity, or we are the Latvians and we stand alone in these global storms, and we will kind of hide in our ethnic past. So this is the predominant discourse of Latvian cultural policy, who is supporting in many cases ethnic archives and ethnic history of the nation. But the idea of kind of futurism and future developments and global links and globalization is almost non-present. So I would say we are still under the spell of ethnic romanticism, which actually adores itself in its own mirror.
My question is related with the last comments and Thomas' question about implementation of different visions of national identity. I mean that probably this national romanticism is more or less corrupted in contemporary days because, you know, this global processes. And in previous history, we remember this implementation of Soviet identities and ethnic identity, which doesn't work very good. But from the other side, we see, as Vladislav commented, that EU identity as well is not very working. And I would say that Nordic mythology, I call it like mythology, works even worse than European, you know. Then in Lithuania, we have some, you know, our own strange visions, you know, like between Belarusian nationalists to Grand Duchy of Lithuania, or from the sea to sea. You Pilsudski, this project, together with Poland to build. But in any way, we see some diversity of different projects of implementation of identities. Does it mean there's some kind of crisis of identity? Crisis of Baltic identity, especially because we fear to be marginal or margins of the world, and it means the fear, anxiety to be on the margin and to be invisible. This invisibility of identity creates some national anxiety. Or do you not agree with me, or do you have the other comments, Vladislav?
Yes, thank you so much, Professor Mažeikis. Yeah, and you see, when I received these lists of questions to me, you started with this problematic of critical theory and so on. And when we discussed our, you see, our this meeting, it seems to me approximately 6 or 7 months ago, I wanted to discuss this problematic that is connected of our identity with not only with Europe, but with specific region of Europe. Because this critical theory extremely is important. I mean, first of all, this region of that Deniss Hanovs said about post-colonialism, this specific Eastern European case. Eastern European case that our states, maybe new states in 20th century as Latvia or Estonia, or in huge states as Lithuania or Poland, in huge time was these states were included in large continental empires, with large number of minorities, with very, very strong collective identities and so on. And so according to your, you see, information, Professor Mažeikis, about the crisis of, you see, ideology, maybe identity, European identity, it seems to me this crisis is connected with this ignorance of this specific. For instance, for ethnic minorities, why we don't want to discuss this problematic of the I can say inclusion of these large minorities in this Eastern European region with huge culture heritage, with language, with you see culture, professional culture too. Why we must be integrated here as migrant only, as for instance migrant in Western Europe, for instance outside of European continent. Why we can't to preserve our this collective identity with strong culture, for instance. So it seems to me this crisis, when we return to your, you see, information, is connected with this situation that I also use this term as toxic sociology or toxic, you see, politology. We don't want to recognize all this complicity, you see, of European history, of the history of different groups in Europe. So because I want to discuss this problematic in such case, in such discourse, and why we have these two weak position of critical theory. By the way, here, for instance, in our Latvian social sciences, in sociology, in political science too, because in critical theory, as Deniss Hanovs said about Jürgen Habermas, who really won't describe and estimate situation with all this contradictional complicity here. So, and in such case, it is more close to my interest how to discuss such problematic in Europe, and identity with so-called large Europe, with European Union.
Deniss?
Your
microphone, Deniss.
I think I would just add very short comment. I think I would agree to what Vladislav has said. complexity of Eastern European history has always been there. All these empires have been the patchwork of different religions, communities, and we saw it before the First World War. But I think at the moment, we here in this region still experience that we have not learned to develop the discursive diversity in public life and in political culture, because it would mean to share. It would mean to give place near your political party or your political philosophy to someone else who might have a different view, a different opinion. And this is actually the sad story of the post-colonial societies, which are doomed in many cases to repeat the same colonial pattern. We see now the politics of Latvian language, which is not inclusive. It's not inclusive in public space. It's not inclusive in, so to say, state marketing. You can't really see the philosophy of Latvian language, which would unite all the people in Latvia, which would be also for youngsters a new bridge to different cultures. So we see that now it's our turn to produce the same forbid and forget. But unfortunately, this is not the productive way of how to develop the society of the 21st century, because the 21st century in countries near us, let's take Germany, is the century which has coped with the dream of mono-ethnic state and culture. It has accepted the migration as the way how society is being developed. And migration means that you are including many other cultures. Then you actually decide for yourself how you would create this culture of sharing and participation. And now we see in the new government in Germany, which, as every government, can and must be criticized, but it has one thing which now at the moment is a fantasy here for the Latvians, that people of different ethnic backgrounds have leading positions in government, and that these are people with migrant background and with different social identities. And that's why Latvia is one of the last countries which has not ratified the law on partnership. We are, I think, becoming provincial. We are not, we have, and this is a mystery for me, I must say, as a citizen and as someone who tries to analyze it. I mean, the society which is so very opposed to migrants and refugees has itself in the 20th century experienced the many times experienced the how it is to be a migrant, how it is to be a refugee. And now we are not sharing our territory with others who are in trouble. And this is, I think, quite a selfish attitude towards European values. The question is, I know it's a bit pathetic, have we deserved the European ideas? I mean, can we realize it? I'm becoming more and more skeptical about it.
Yeah, maybe maybe I can add. Deniss Hanovs is the doctor of art, yeah, and we have, it's very important, for instance, I forgot, it was approximately 3 or 4 years ago, we have National Art Museum in Latvia, yeah, but now we can see only, you see pieces of ethnic Latvians here. Because in this museum there was too huge number of collection of Russian art. But now this Latvian National Museum without this Russian art. This means what? That really we, or maybe elite, or maybe political establishment, estimate Latvian, you see, presence in European context, yeah, this public context without this ethnic diversity, yeah, and according to myself, this is a good example of such ethnization of our public space and public communication too, and of course this ethnization of the way to Europe, yeah. Because I can say why I said that, for instance, attitudes to minorities, it's too close to migrants. Yeah, maybe from these minorities political establishment way this, as John Locke, founder of liberalism, described as tabula rasa. We need only this absolutely empty consciousness, and we can put only we are subjects, we can put here values without your heritage. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, just one more short comment. I think what we have discussed now in this last question, well, we clearly see that this is a concept of how you sustain power by reproducing this ethnic nationalism. But the question is that in each case, if the institute or a human body or a social body is not well, and if you don't do anything about it, then you will get worse. And we see already alienation in this situation now close to Russia might be very topical issues for, becoming very nervous. And then, of course, this will perpetuate these negative images of Russians because they have appeared again after Crimea. And if you have this alienation, and it's not only on the side of the ethnic minorities, but society as such, then you have a very low level of participation in the communities, let's say, and community elections. It was about 30%. So 70% of those who could actually decide how the capital of Latvia would develop, they don't care. And they have become spectators. I mean, is this short-term philosophy to actually somehow switch off the democratic mechanism? If this is the case, then of course it's a self-proclaimed risk for the sustainability of this state. If you just scrutinize what is going on and you do not participate, so how can one expect to be involved in different ways? So this will have its negative results very soon, because this is, I think, a long-lasting sickness, kind of.
I remember in November when Lithuania experienced lots of pressure together with Poland at its Belarusian border, the refugee or migrant crisis, because it was a new form of Lukashenko's produced organized migrant crisis, not spontaneous anymore, but sort of refugee tourism, if I may invent that kind of expression. And I remember our media was emphasizing that it is at the Lithuanian, Belarusian and Polish-Belarusian border. And I remember we had a conversation with Vladislav on the phone for different matters. And I asked about Latvian experience with the refugee tourism from Belarus. And I remember what Vladislav said, in Latvia, it's like Latin American story. It's so detached because in Lithuanian case, Vilnius is so close to Belarus and Riga is much further away in distance. So you got a different feeling. But has it changed? Because now it seems like you get more issues at the border, or you receive more refugees. What's the attitude? How do politicians see and how do people regard those migrants? To what extent they look at a human story, and to what extent they see it as a Lukashenko's organized refugee crisis?
Yeah, Professor, you are right, really. The distance between Riga and Minsk is about 500 kilometers. Between Vilnius and Minsk, it seems to me 100 kilometers. Yeah, so 5 times this is the difference. Yeah, so and the majority of Latvian people, half of population, live really in Riga. So, and we are you see, don't feel this connection between Belarus and, you see, Minsk and this political agenda at all. So, but maybe some facts, for instance, with this increasing of tension in Belarus, yeah, there were in mass media information about the desire of some specialists in IT technologies, yeah, from Belarus come to Latvia and be, you see, employed here in Latvian companies, yeah. But it seems to me this information stay now a consciousness really in mass media, not more than 2 weeks, not more. And now, for instance, if you want to research this question, for instance, undertake such content analysis, for instance, of nowadays Latvian media, you can't really find information about this. You see, desire of people from Belarus come here and be employed here. Yeah. Sorry, it seems to me some problems maybe with communication.
No, everything is okay.
Okay, yeah. So.
Well, I think I would probably just add that although it's really kind of detached, I would probably argue if we look into the media discourse, one of the news agencies, Delphi, has also chosen some interesting articles and titles to publish during this Lukashenko refugees crisis. And of course, if you choose these titles, this is also the way how you see the politics of the media. For example, they have described in details how in Poland, some people near the border territories have come to help the soldiers with their jeeps to, as they was saying, they're saying like hunting kind of these people, you know. And I can imagine these tough guys who get on their cars and then they help to search it, because in fact Germany opposed something like this very categorically and actually was against this. But then I looked into the comments of this article, and the total majority of people were supporting something like this. So I can imagine as racism is quite developed and present in Latvia.
Thank you very much to our guests, to Professor Deniss Hanovs and Vladislav Volkov. This is the program called Freely and Critically, run by me, Tomas Kavaliauskas, and Professor Gintautas Mažeikis from Kaunas, Vytautas Magnus University.
Thank you.
Thank you.